The house was quiet, except for the steady hum of the heating system battling against the December chill. Olivia Munro sat in the study, a warm cup of coffee untouched beside her as she sorted through a stack of paperwork. It was supposed to be a simple task: find last year's tax returns, double-check their deductions, and ensure everything was in order before the year ended. Daniel, her husband of 15 years, had always been meticulous about their finances. He kept everything organized in labeled folders, stacked neatly inside the bottom drawer of his mahogany desk. Olivia had never questioned his system before, but that night something felt different. As she sifted through the paperwork, her fingers brushed against a crisp white envelope tucked beneath the usual financial statements. The weight of it was different, thicker, heavier, as if it carried something important. Curiosity prickled at her. She pulled it out and unfolded the contents, her eyes scanning the words printed in bold, emotionless font. Petition for divorce. She blinked. Once, twice. The words didn't change. She let out a slow breath, her pulse steady, her hands surprisingly still. There was no initial wave of panic, no tears, no sharp intake of breath. Instead, a cold clarity settled over her. This was real. The pages detailed the systematic dismantling of their life together, who would get what, the division of assets, the clauses that protected Daniel from financial repercussions. Olivia read through it with the same detached focus she might have given a business contract. And then she saw the date, December 25th, Christmas Day. Daniel always had a flair for dramatic timing. He wasn't just planning to end their marriage. He wanted to do it in the most spectacular, humiliating way possible. She could picture it now. The perfectly decorated dining room, the table set with their finest china, their family gathered in their elegant home. The perfect setting for his grand exit. A rehearsed speech, a dramatic pause, maybe even a well-placed sigh of regret. And then, boom, he'd slide the papers across the table, letting her take the fall in front of everyone. 15 years together, reduced to 12 impersonal pages of legal jargon. Did he really think she wouldn't find out? A bitter smile touched her lips. Oh, Daniel. As she sat there, staring at the papers, 100 little moments suddenly made sense. The late-night meetings that stretched longer than usual. The whispers on the phone that ended when she entered the room. The sudden, obsessive interest in their finances, going through old records with a fine-tooth comb. It had all been there, clear as day. She had just refused to see it. She thought back to their last Christmas together. Though Daniel didn't know it would be their last. They had decorated the tree in the grand living room, each ornament a piece of Munro history. The gold-plated angel from his great-grandmother. The hand-blown glass baubles from Europe. The silver tinsel that had been passed down for generations. Daniel had spoken about those decorations with pride and nostalgia, telling their children how these pieces must stay in the family forever. Forever. The irony was almost laughable now. Her gaze drifted across the room, her eyes landing on the elegant wooden cabinet filled with centuries-old Munro heirlooms. Priceless antiques, expensive artwork, and artifacts that had been guarded by generations. A legacy he never intended to share with her. A legacy he assumed would always be in his control. But now that she knew the truth, that was about to change. Olivia sat in silence, letting her mind work through the cold calculation of what had to happen next. If Daniel wanted Christmas to be unforgettable, then she would make sure of it. A plan began to take shape, unfolding in carefully measured steps. One by one, she would strip him of the very things he cherished most: his history, his legacy, his family's pride. Not out of anger, not even out of revenge, but because, after 15 years of playing the role of the perfect wife, she had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Power doesn't belong to the one who holds it. It belongs to the one who knows how to use it. She picked up her phone and made the first call. Hello, Ms. Carter? Yes. I'd like to discuss a donation to the City Museum. I think they'd be very interested in the Munro art collection. She smiled. Merry Christmas, Daniel. The morning sun filtered through the grand bay windows, casting golden light across the lavishly decorated Munro estate. The air smelled of pine and cinnamon, the unmistakable scent of Christmas filling every corner. The grand tree in the living room stood adorned with Monroe family heirloom ornaments, each one carrying a story, a legacy passed down through generations. A legacy that, after today, would no longer belong to Daniel Monroe. Olivia sat in the study, sipping her coffee as she scrolled through her email, confirming the final details of her carefully orchestrated plan. The City Museum, the Historical Society, the Women's Shelter, the Children's Hospital. Every institution she had selected had responded with overwhelming gratitude. The Monroe family art collection would now be a permanent feature in the city's most prestigious museum. The antique grandfather clock, Daniel's pride and joy, would now reside in the Children's Hospital, ticking away the moments in a place where time truly mattered. The sterling silver dining set, once reserved for Monroe family holiday dinners, would now serve meals to hundreds of homeless families in the city's largest shelter. Each treasured heirloom, each piece of history that Daniel had valued more than his marriage, was gone. And he didn't even know it yet. The first set of movers arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. Olivia watched from the second-floor balcony as a team of professionals began carefully removing the most valuable items from the Monroe home. Each piece had been wrapped, documented, and assigned a new home without Daniel's knowledge. The priceless Tiffany lamp collection, already en route to the art museum. The Victorian jewelry set, once promised to their daughter someday, now part of an exhibition showcasing the history of women's wealth and independence. The family's first edition book collection, reserved for the local university library, where students would actually read them instead of letting them collect dust behind glass. By the time Daniel returned home that evening, the house would feel emptier. Not enough for him to immediately notice, but enough to unsettle him. It was the perfect slow burn, the kind of exquisite unraveling that required patience, precision, and timing. And Olivia had spent 15 years perfecting those skills. At 11 a.m., Olivia received a call from the city's largest newspaper. "Mrs. Monroe, we're doing a feature on holiday philanthropy, and we'd love to cover your family's recent donations. The Art Museum and Children's Hospital have spoken highly of your generosity." She smiled, keeping her voice warm but measured. "Oh, that's wonderful. But really, it's all Daniel's idea. He's always been passionate about giving back to the community." The journalist ate it up, praising Daniel's unprecedented act of generosity. She promised to publish the story on Christmas morning, ensuring that by the time Daniel even realized what had happened, his reputation would be locked in place as the city's most charitable man. How could he possibly deny his own generosity? As the sun began to set, Olivia made her final preparations. She placed empty gift boxes under the Christmas tree, each one meticulously wrapped and labeled with the name of a missing heirloom. The gold-plated angel ornament, the family's silver menorah, passed down for generations, the antique watch that Daniel's grandfather had carried on the day he founded Monroe and Associates, all gone, all given away in Daniel's name. By the time the Monroe family gathered for their Christmas Eve dinner, Olivia would be sitting across from her husband, watching him slowly unravel as realization dawned. And by the time he reached for his perfectly prepared divorce papers on Christmas morning, she would be ready with her own surprise. Daniel had always loved grand gestures, dramatic exits, and public displays of control. But this time, he was about to learn a very different lesson. Because the best gifts aren't the ones you receive, they're the ones you never see coming. The Monroe estate sat atop the hill, its grandeur unmistakable even as the final days of December coated the city in frost. Inside, the warmth of twinkling lights and rich holiday scents filled the mansion. But beneath that illusion of festivity, a silent storm was brewing. Olivia stood in the study, staring at the shelves where the Monroe family legacy once resided. The grandfather clock, the priceless paintings, the antique silver, gone. Carefully, methodically, piece by piece, she had dismantled the empire Daniel Monroe held so dear. And the best part? He didn't even know it yet. The process had to be perfectly timed, not too fast to raise suspicion, but not too slow to lose momentum. Olivia had spent weeks coordinating with curators, charities, and auction houses, ensuring that each heirloom was properly documented, transported, and publicly acknowledged. Each donation came with one key condition. Announcements would be made gradually, leading up to Christmas Day. December 15th, the Art Museum released a statement about a generous anonymous donor gifting an entire collection of early 19th century paintings. The name Monroe was notably absent from the press release. For now. December 18th, the Historical Society confirmed the acquisition of Monroe family artifacts, relics of old money and prestige now curated for public display. The gold pocket watch, which once belonged to Daniel's great-grandfather, the very same one he used to sign the founding documents of Monroe and Associates, was now an exhibit centerpiece. December 22nd, the Children's Hospital unveiled a new wing, complete with a priceless antique clock in the lobby, donated in the name of Daniel Monroe. The press releases were staggered, allowing the story to gain traction bit by bit. Olivia wanted Daniel to notice, but not all at once. He had to feel the slow unraveling of control, the creeping dread of watching his world slip through his fingers. On December 23rd, Olivia planted the first seed of doubt. At breakfast, she left the morning newspaper open on the kitchen counter, folded neatly to the headline about the Children's Hospital donation. Daniel, still groggy with sleep, poured his coffee before glancing at the article. His eyes froze mid-sip. "Wait a second," he muttered. He grabbed the paper, his fingers tightening as he skimmed the piece. "I don't remember signing off on this." Olivia, standing at the stove, simply smiled over her shoulder. "Oh, I thought you had. Everyone's talking about how generous you've been this year." Daniel scanned the article again, his confusion deepening. His name was all over it. Quotes praising his commitment to charity. Mentions of his dedication to giving back. It was a perfect PR move, but it wasn't his. A flicker of unease crossed his face, but he shook it off. Must have been a clerical mix-up. He chuckled, though the laughter was hollow. "I'll have my assistant look into it." Olivia just sipped her tea. "Oh, Daniel, if only you knew." By Christmas Eve, the Monroe family began noticing the missing pieces. Margaret, Daniel's sister, arrived first, her sharp eyes scanning the house. "Where's the grandfather clock?" she asked, frowning at the empty space in the grand foyer. "Oh," Olivia answered casually. Daniel thought it should go to a better cause. Margaret's brow furrowed. "He did." Daniel stiffened. He hadn't made that decision, but now he couldn't contradict it without looking selfish. As more guests arrived, the murmurs spread. "Where's the silverware? What happened to the Monroe china set? Did someone move the Tiffany lamps?" Daniel's jaw clenched tighter with each question. He had been so preoccupied with his secret Christmas Day divorce plans, so confident in his control, that he hadn't even realized how much of his empire had already slipped away. As dinner began, the final blow arrived. A breaking news segment aired on the television in the living room, interrupting the holiday music. "The Monroe family's unprecedented generosity continues," the reporter announced, standing outside the city's art museum, where a new exhibit featuring the Monroe collection had just been revealed. Daniel went completely still. His own signature flashed across the screen. A plaque displayed his name under a century-old Monroe family heirloom, now permanently housed in the museum. The room fell into stunned silence. Margaret dropped her fork. Daniel's mother gasped. And Daniel shot up from his chair, his face red with barely restrained fury. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "Who authorized this?" Olivia set down her wine glass with deliberate grace. She tilted her head, playing the perfect, composed wife. "You did, darling." The room sucked in a collective breath. Daniel's hands fisted at his sides. "I did not." Olivia reached into the stack of neatly prepared donation documents, sliding them across the table. Perfectly signed, perfectly legal, perfectly orchestrated. By Daniel Monroe. It was then that Daniel realized the battle was already lost. The donations had been processed, publicly announced, and legally documented. Even if he tried to stop it, even if he demanded a reversal, he'd have to admit he hadn't been in control of his own estate. And the Monroe family name could never recover from that humiliation. His mother's face was white with shock. His sister stared at Olivia with a newfound respect. The guests whispered among themselves, the scandal unfolding in real time. Daniel gritted his teeth, his mind desperately searching for a way out. And then, Olivia delivered the final blow. She stood up, walked to the Christmas tree, and picked up an envelope wrapped in red ribbon. "Merry Christmas, Daniel." She handed it to him with a knowing smile. Inside was her own set of divorce papers. Filed, signed, finalized. The guests gasped. Daniel's face drained of color. The ultimate Christmas surprise. Daniel Monroe had planned to destroy Olivia on Christmas Day. Instead, she had dismantled his empire right in front of him, piece by priceless piece. His name, once synonymous with wealth and power, was now the face of forced philanthropy. His legacy, once locked away in private collections, was now spread across the city, forever untouchable. And Olivia, she simply walked away, leaving Daniel to sit among the ghosts of what he once controlled, staring at the empty spaces where his family's power used to be. Because sometimes the best revenge is giving everything away. The Monroe Mansion, once a fortress of wealth and prestige, now stood as a shell of its former self. The grand halls, once adorned with priceless heirlooms, felt emptier than ever. Yet, the Christmas decorations remained perfectly arranged, a cruel contrast to the storm brewing beneath the surface. The morning sun peeked through the frost-kissed windows, casting golden light onto a scene of carefully orchestrated destruction. Olivia Monroe stood by the dining table, sipping her coffee, her expression unreadable. Everything was exactly as she had planned. The news vans were already stationed outside. The local press had arrived early, eager to capture yet another chapter of the Monroe family's unprecedented generosity. Olivia had ensured that every major media outlet was aware that this morning would mark a significant family announcement, and what a spectacle it would be. The first sign of trouble came when Daniel stormed into the living room, still in his silk robe, his face flushed with panic. "Olivia," his voice was sharp, barely contained. "We need to talk. Now." She set down her coffee deliberately slowly, glancing up at him with feigned concern. "What is it, darling? You seem tense." He threw a newspaper onto the table, the front page headline screaming in bold letters, "Monroe Family Legacy Now Public Property. Historic Donations Set New Philanthropic Record." Underneath the headline was a photo of the Monroe collection displayed in museums, hospitals, and community centers, all donated in Daniel's name. His hands were trembling with rage. "You did this?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Did what, exactly?" Daniel slammed his fist against the table, sending a cup of untouched coffee spilling over the mahogany surface. "Don't play games with me, Olivia. I never approved any of this." She tilted her head, her expression as serene as ever. "Didn't you? Your name is on all the donation papers." Daniel's face turned ghostly pale as realization hit him. His name was on the documents, but he had never signed them. "You forged my signature," he breathed, voice barely above a whisper. Olivia let out a soft laugh, almost pitying. "Oh, Daniel, after 15 years of signing tax documents and charity checks together, I know your signature better than you do." His chest rose and fell rapidly, his world spinning out of control. This was supposed to be his victory, his clean break, his perfectly planned exit. Instead, he had woken up on Christmas morning to find his empire dismantled and gifted to strangers. And now the entire world was watching. The doorbell rang. Olivia glanced at the time. Perfect timing. When the butler opened the door, the reporters swarmed in, cameras flashing, microphones held up expectantly. "Mr. Monroe, can you comment on your record-breaking charitable contributions? What inspired you to give away your family's wealth so generously? What does this mean for the future of the Monroe Empire?" Daniel looked utterly lost, his mouth opening and closing, searching for words. His carefully crafted public image as a shrewd businessman was unraveling before his eyes. Olivia stepped forward, the picture of composed elegance, and placed a gentle hand on Daniel's arm. "My husband has always believed in giving back," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "This Christmas, He wanted to remind everyone that true wealth isn't in what we keep, but in what we share. The reporters ate it up. Daniel turned to her, his face a mix of betrayal and fury. He wanted to yell, to expose her, to fight back, but he couldn't. If he denied the donations, he would look like a greedy fraud. If he admitted he hadn't approved them, he would look incompetent. There was no way out. Olivia had checkmated him in every possible scenario. He was trapped. As the interview concluded, Olivia pulled out a small, red envelope from her pocket. "Oh, and Daniel," she said sweetly, "I have something for you." She handed him the envelope. He hesitated before opening it, his breath catching in his throat when he saw the contents. Divorce papers, already signed. The camera flashes captured the moment perfectly. The powerful CEO of Monroe Enterprises, standing in his luxurious mansion with nothing left but a worthless name and a document confirming his public humiliation. He stared at Olivia in stunned silence, his lips barely moving. "You destroyed everything," she smiled. "No, darling. I set it free." With that, she turned on her heels and walked away, leaving Daniel Monroe alone in the ruins of his kingdom. The story of the Monroe family's extraordinary philanthropy continued to make headlines for weeks. Olivia vanished from high society, but her legacy remained. Daniel, on the other hand, became a cautionary tale. A man who held onto power for too long, only to lose everything overnight. His business partners distanced themselves, and his reputation crumbled under the weight of his forced generosity. Meanwhile, Olivia moved on. She took nothing from the divorce because she had already taken everything that mattered. She had turned betrayal into opportunity, proving that revenge isn't just about taking something away. It's about transforming loss into something greater. Her final lesson to Daniel? Sometimes the best gifts are the ones you never intended to give.